we're just noticing my pants do not fit and I do not want to live like this.
We are a society of, we want to look good, feel good, and we do focus on the weight aspect, but I think it is important, to recognize that when that's happening, it's not just the surface, it is what's happening underneath it. And then how do we stay cognizant of that to give ourselves the healthiest possibility?
Welcome to Women in Leadership Talk, where you'll hear from successful women who are empowering other women with their stories of adversity, resiliency, and success. And here is your host, Vicki Bradley, founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. I think a lot of you on the end of the, listening into this podcast, you're going to find this one interesting because we're going to be talking about a subject that has gotten a lot of attention lately. So we're going to be talking about perimenopause and menopause. So make sure you listen in, stay with us, stay connected through the time of this podcast. I want to welcome Dr. Heather Awad. I say it wrong. Sorry, Heather. I even practiced. Okay. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And this is a topic, oh my gosh, I know so many of us can relate. And finally, after many, many years, there is more science coming out, and we're starting to take menopause more seriously. So I'm excited to jump in this conversation today. But before I do that, audience, if I can ask a favor of you, wherever you listen to your podcast, please go in and subscribe right now. Subscribe to the WIL Talk podcast so you get notified whenever we drop a new show. And you've already seen we have amazing, amazing women that are joining us. We have some men too, really special men join us as well. But the women that are joining us are talking about, their stories, sharing things that really all of us are worried about or need help with or need support with. And so it's a great time to hit that subscribe button. Okay. So let me give you more information about Dr. Heather. So she is a doctor, entrepreneur, mother, author, speaker, and an expert in midlife weight loss. And I can't wait to talk about that. Yes. And she's joining us to talk about why women gain weight as we go into perimenopause and menopause. We're going to talk about the biology and the cultural factors that contribute to it, and share a surprisingly simple process for losing weight at midlife. So Dr. Heather, thank you. Thank you for being here, and also for the work you're doing, because, if I talk about my own story or journey with menopause, like 25 pounds, not a very tall person, 25 pounds is a lot of weight. And you get so discouraged because you just put the weight on and then it's harder to get it off. And so I'm excited for us to discuss this today. But before we go there, maybe talk about your why. Like what led you down the path of, women's health, menopause, like how did you get here?
Sure. Well, I'm a family doctor, so I've kind of took care of everybody cradle to grave, but I did always love doing women's health. And I found myself stuck with weight gain at midlife myself. So I was in my mid 40s, and all of a sudden, with changing nothing that I was doing, I just started to put on weight. And this is a story I hear all the time, right? I thought, well, I'll just do those things that I did after babies, and they didn't work, and I just kept gaining weight. And then I thought, well, I'll try some of these diets that I've never tried before. And most of them made me feel sick, like keto, and some just didn't work at all. And then I used one of those app-based programs on your phone, and I worked really hard. It was super restrictive, and I got to the end and bounced back to an even higher weight.
Oh.
And this was, at age 50, 51, I was just devastated because I thought my body is broken. I don't want to live the second half of my life overweight. And it was kind of professionally devastating to me as well, because I was always that food as medicine doctor. Like if you came in and your cholesterol was high, I would say, well, let's talk about what you eat for lunch. And here I am, not able to figure this out. Well, then my periods kind of dropped, and I realized, oh, I'm in menopause. We weren't talking about it quite so much back then. So I thought, well, there's got to be a key to this. So I started diving into the research about what happens in the digestive system when our estrogen starts to drop. And then I kind of read about all the changes that happened there. And I thought, oh, this is actually a code you can crack. And so I thought, well, I can do this. And then I also got some coaching. I invested in some coaching for myself and learned that I was doing a lot of eating my feelings
Mm.
and eating my frustrations. And so, kind of putting those two things together, weight loss got really simple. And I lost 27 pounds and really don't fear putting it back on again because I know how to eat now. And like I said, I don't eat my feelings anymore. And I thought, I never considered myself being someone who would work in the weight loss field, but I thought, wow, a lot of people have this problem and maybe this is what I can bring to the world. So that's what I do now.
Wow. I love it. I love it. And I love that, you know, you have, as a doctor, you have taken care of people from cradle to grave, as you said. And so you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and you've seen how hard it is because it's easy to step back and say, oh, just go on a diet and you'll lose it, or just exercise and it'll go away. And it does not for everyone. Some people, sure, they may have that metabolism, but not everyone can do that. And to your point, also, it can be timing, right? Because when I put on all my menopause weight, it was during COVID, and and we were locked down for 2 years, and I put it on, and then I was like, why can't I get it off? Right. And I kept doing all these things. I went on a no sugar diet for
Mhm.
3 months, and I'm talking no sugar whatsoever. I lost 1 pound. I was
Mm,
like, how's that even possible? Right.
right.
So, how, I guess many of us are struggling with not just the weight, but it's hot flashes, brain fog, like all of those things. So, you know, what causes this, and how do we, I'd say a couple things. How do we prepare for it? Because when we're younger, we're like, oh, yeah, our moms are just complaining. It's very real. So, how do we prepare for it? And are there things we can do at younger ages that will help us navigate a smoother menopause? I'll start with that, and then we'll see where we
Sure.
go.
So what happens in perimenopause, our estrogen goes up and down. Like the graphs you see are just, I mean, they're even steeper than a roller coaster, up and down and up and down, and then it just declines. And at this point, when you're done and you've had a whole year of no periods, that is menopause. You're done. You're post-menopause at that point. And at that point, your brother, your male coworker, your husband, they have more estrogen circulating in their body than you do. So that is what happens. And actually, the hot flashes and the brain fog are a result both of what happens with the brain when estrogen is going up and down and goes
Mm.
low. The weight gain actually comes from how estrogen interacts with our digestive system. And so we get a sudden bump in insulin resistance. And this is why everyone notices. I mean, people will tell me, I gained 7 pounds overnight and then it just went up from
Mhm.
there. We notice that it's fast. It's not like, oh, I gained 1 pound a year. It's, all of a sudden we're gaining and gaining and gaining, right? And that is from this bump in insulin resistance. And insulin is a fat storage hormone. It also helps our bodies take the glucose from our food and bring it into our tissues. But when you get resistant, you need more of it to process the same glucose. So you have more of it hanging around. And we live in a culture that doesn't do well eating style for a normal weight, and especially not for insulin resistance. So you've got insulin hanging around all day. And so for many people, that's what we're doing is we're storing fat all day, which is different from what was going on before when we didn't need so much insulin to run our digestive system. So, things that we can do early, it does help to pay attention to your older relatives and find out what happened to them. You'll see there's still going to be some variation, but you may get some clues from your mom or your aunts, what may come because there's so many symptoms, right? You can have joint pain, the brain fog, the hot flashes, anxiety, depression, all these things. So there can be some clues there for sure. So it is good to listen. And then also it's a great time to start thinking about nourishing yourself and taking care of yourself and thinking, I actually like to think at midlife, we need to start thinking of our bodies as a luxury car. If someone buys a luxury car, the dealership tells them you have to put premium gas in this or it will
Mm-hmm.
not run well. And it's the same with our bodies at midlife and beyond. It's time to only put the premium gas in. Really think about foods that nourish us, increase our movement if that's not part of our routine already. Start paying attention to things like sleep. Thankfully, people are talking about sleep a lot lately as well, but also very part of the midlife journey. So those are probably some things to really, you can start doing anytime.
So how do you, okay, so I agree 100%. And sleep is definitely impacted, especially when you move from peri into full menopause.
Mhm.
So yes, I exercise all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
How do you regulate that sleep? Because that, and I hear this from so many women in my age range, that I'll fall asleep but I can't stay asleep. I'm waking at 3 o'clock in the morning and then I can't get back to sleep, or I'm surface sleeping. And yes, that deep sleep is super important, that we get it. So what are things that we can do that can help us nourish our bodies, as you said,
Mhm.
and help to regulate things?
Sure. If we're looking at sleep in particular, there are a lot of things, which is great. Any kind of exercise is proven to help with sleep. So whatever you like is going to help you sleep better. So that's one thing. I mean, there are some of the sleep hygiene things that most of us have heard of. Maybe it's time to darken your room more. I didn't used to do that, but at perimenopause added the blackout curtains. Making the room colder also will help. And if you're like, I didn't need that before, well, you might need it now. And that's okay. Other things are actually progesterone, a hormone replacement can help with sleep. So it may be time to talk about that with your doctor. Also, 80% of women, when they hit the menopause transition, are deficient in magnesium.
Mm,
And magnesium glycinate and magnesium threonate are good for sleep. Those two supplements you want to talk to your doctor and medical team about because they do interact with medications. So, timing wise, you may need to talk to them about when you might take that if you want that for sleep. There's a little bit less evidence with acupuncture, but I have personally found acupuncture to be helpful for interrupted sleep on
okay.
top of other things I'm doing. And so for sleep, and also some of it is just intention. A lot of us, like you and I, we've been go, go, go for all these years, right? And you hit midlife and you're coming off of 9 years of chronic stress, right? So some of it's looking and saying, how much sleep am I actually getting? And thinking, could I move towards 7 hours? If you're thinking, there's no way I can get 7 hours, can I get 15 more minutes every night this week?
I say
You
that
know,
every morning. Just
yeah,
15 more.
right,
Please,
right.
it's news.
Yeah. So those are kind of things that I think are especially helpful with sleep. If you're having hot flashes, of course, that are waking you up,
Mm,
there is no like, is it bad enough? Is it not quite bad enough? Go ahead and have a conversation with your doctor or medical provider. And I'll let people know too that if that person doesn't know a lot about hormone therapy, then it may be time to add another person to your medical
mm.
team.
Yeah,
I,
great.
I love to tell the story that I adore my family doctor. She does a lot of things for me and has for many years. And then when I said to her, it's time to talk about hormones, she threw up her hands and said, I'm afraid of hormones. And I said, okay, we'll talk about the next thing. And then I went and got a gynecologist who is, well educated in hormone therapy. And so now I have both of them on my team. And unfortunately, primary care doctors and OBGYNs have low levels of menopause
Training.
training. Yeah. You can go to menopause. And that's the Menopause Society, which used to be called the North American Menopause Society. And there you can find people who are menopause certified practitioners, which is really nice.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Find out who's in your town because you're not committed to doing anything, but you deserve to have the conversation if you're having some of these symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love what I heard you say there about who's your team. right? Like,
Yeah.
we're not all experts in everything. So, it's like a chef, is your expertise, baking, or is it cooking? And so, you're not going to go to maybe that top chef that's a cook to ask them to bake your wedding cake, right? And so it's really looking at what are your needs and finding the expertise to support you in navigating what you're going through. And I want to go back to the weight loss piece and something you
Mhm.
said that resonated, like you tried keto and it actually made you sick. And, I did the no sugar and I lost 1 pound in 3 months, and that drove me crazy because you are feeling like you're doing all the right things, but then you're not seeing it actualize. So
Right.
how do we navigate that? I mean, I understand what you're talking about with insulin and that insulin resistance and we're the fat storage, but so what are different ways that you might manage the weight loss aspect of menopause?
Sure. Well, a few things. One, actually looking at what sugar is in your week is a good place to start, partially because 3/4 of cans and boxes of things have added sugar in them. So in North America, there's that line on the nutrition label that says added sugar, and you want to know what's there. Because if you have a can of chopped tomatoes, of course there will be sugar in it in general because all fruits and vegetables have some sugar. But the added sugar line means they added an extra sweetener in there. And that's the one you want to look at. And the reason to know that is people find sugar in things that they didn't know was in there. People say, oh, my jar of spaghetti sauce has it, when they can pick something else. Peanut butter, and other nut butters frequently have it. I had a client who found it in what was supposed to be plain chickpeas,
Mm,
and she was astounded and just picked a different brand, and that was fine, right? So you want to know where your sugar is so that if you want to eat sugar, you can have it, and the times where you're not wanting it, you can avoid it. The other thing is that it's a really good time, again, thinking about nourishing ourselves, to make sure that every meal has protein in it. And I like to recommend vegetables or berries. Really, we're thinking about fiber, but I tell people have some vegetables or berries with each meal. And then you want to have a little bit of healthy fat as well. If you're having some kind of meat like red meat or poultry, you're getting some fat with your meal, or cheese. But fish, or sometimes when we have a plant-based meal, we have to make sure that we have a little fat in there. And that can be a little olive oil or avocado oil. But those things help us digest our vitamins better that are in our food. And they also help us stay, um, I don't want to say stay full, but stay satisfied longer. So the protein and the fat really help us stay satisfied from one meal to the next. And that is also a great way to look at losing weight. Now, next step is prioritizing those meals and getting away from snacks. This is one of the things we look at culturally when we look at people in the 60s and 70s. Maybe your grandmother said they used to, it actually was a thing to say, I keep trim by eating my meals and not eating snacks. Now, they weren't, extremely skinny people, but they had a normal, healthy body weights. And by eating meals and not eating in between meals at midlife, that is a great way to lose weight and can be a very simple way to lose weight. Um, so, but it's a little bit difficult in our culture because a lot of us go to meetings where there is food. The break room has food at work. People make stuff for you and want you to eat it right then. There's a lot of grazing that goes on
that we
in
don't
our
even
culture.
realize, right? Like,
Yeah, we don't.
sometimes you do it unconsciously. And
Right.
so what I'm hearing you say is being very conscious of, reading your labels, what you're putting in your mouth, because what's that saying, once on your lips, forever on your hips. And when you get to midlife, it goes to the belly.
Right.
But I think that's a very important comment that you're making. And the protein piece,
Yes.
I find personally, like, I've been tracking it now for about, well, we're in October, so 10 months. I've
Mhm.
been consciously tracking how much protein I get. And I find it really hard, Dr. Heather, to get enough protein. So and I do tricks, like I'll put protein shake in my coffee in the morning,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's one way I might do it. I add more yogurt or cottage cheese to things that you can even imagine, like my eggs, my soup. I made broccoli soup last night and I'm putting feta and cottage cheese and plain yogurt in it. No sugar, by the way, no sugar in the yogurt, just to try to boost the protein. So
Mhm.
how do women who don't want to eat a lot of, let's say, meat products, how do they get more of that protein into their diet?
Well, one thing I would say is that first is just to make sure you have it at all your meals. So, and the plant-based proteins are great as well. So tofu and tempeh are great things to add. And, the beans will give you both protein and fiber, which is great. I think we're a little bit overdone on the protein numbers.
Mm,
I think that people, where that comes from is people who have had long-standing obesity, which may also be an issue. They are recommended to eat a high protein diet. For most people who were doing pretty fine and then just gained weight at menopause, they actually just need to make sure they have protein at every meal. So not the same high levels that you're hearing on the internet.
okay. Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah, but I do find a lot of women who say notice when they start looking at their day that they don't get any protein with lunch, which you really need to have it at every meal, or they don't get it at breakfast. So it does need to be at every meal. That is important for health goals and weight loss goals.
Well, let's talk about that because there is like controversy on, and I'll just use myself as an example. I started intermittent fasting last
Mhm.
December. And I was doing that religiously until August, and my window was 18 hours. So I was fasting for a lot. So 2 meals a day, which works for me because I didn't eat breakfast anyway. But the only negative was I cut my coffee out because I do have to have something in my coffee, but I cut it out and waited till later in the day to get it. But then I started noticing, because of menopause, I
Mhm.
started noticing the elasticity of my skin was changing.
Sure.
And so is that related to intermittent fasting? Is that just menopause in general? Right? Because I'm trying to boost the protein. Like there's all these things that are happening at one time. And so how do we balance? I guess is
For
where I
sure.
want to go with it.
Yeah. I mean, it can be a mixture of things because you are going to lose some elasticity anyway, right? Of skin with the menopause transition. But you're right. You do want to get like 3 servings of protein a day. And so there's things you can do. You could have your coffee with protein powder in the morning, and that could be what you count as breakfast, even though it's not a true fast, right? And then you have your 2 meals and experiment with it and just see if you like that or not. This is what I do a lot with people is okay, let's look at what fits with your day and let's experiment with it. The other thing I see people do sometimes is they'll drink bone broth in the morning, which has quite a good amount of protein in it. It's very nourishing. And then that's kind of their drink in the morning. Officially it breaks your fast,
I
but
was
it's
going to
not a
ask.
it's not a bad breakfast really when you think about it. And then you go on and have your 2 meals later. So there are kind of some, I don't want to say they're cheating because I hate the word because we don't cheat on ourselves. But it's a way of doing things. If you look at I was reading about an actor who talked about that she does a 4-hour eating window where she has 2 meals, but it turns out she does also have coffee and bone broth in the morning when she wakes up. So someone, an endocrinologist would say, well, actually, she broke her fast with that. But, she's found a rhythm where she gets all the nourishment she needs and also works for how she wants to live in her body.
Well, and I think that's the caveat right there, right? It's like, how rigid are we with the formulas, right? Because I was being very rigid. I was like, okay, no, I can't break my fast. I have to fast for 18 hours. So I would have tea, but my coffee wouldn't come until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which then creates another issue with the sleep.
Yeah.
So, right. So I'm trying to balance it. And then when I went to my specialist and he did my blood work, he was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Like your blood work is amazing. I was like, oh, I'm fasting. And he was like, oh, he was so excited that I was doing that. But I was struggling with how I felt like it was accelerating the loss of elasticity in my skin. And so then I was like, okay, do I go back? Because there's different schools of thought, right? But I like what you're sharing about, maybe trying the bone broth. Yes, it breaks my fast, but I am getting the protein, and I happen to like bone broth. I think it's good personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what about somebody who they have a plant-based diet? So how would they get that little bit of extra protein in their diet?
There, I would say probably supplements, like a vegan protein powder would be a good thing to start their day with if they wanted extra there. In general, vegetarians have to watch the level of starch versus everything else in their diet. There are a few people that I follow online who eat a more protein forward plant-based diet. But when you think about it, a lot of times when you think about vegetarian food, you think about pasta and rice and those kinds of things. And there are some swaps you can make there too. With all vegetables have a little bit of protein, so you can have your protein-based meal that has tempeh or tofu, but then you can also serve it over cauliflower rice, which
Mm.
makes it not a starchy meal. Or you can, if you want to have just a little bit of whole grain, and whole grain is very healthy as well and can go with your plant-based meal, but isn't going to put you on that imbalance where you have a lot of starch versus the rest of the meal. And then again, there are plant-based noodles to try, which are, you know, people have their opinions about them, right? I mean, I really like hearts of palm noodles. My husband and my daughter hate.
I haven't seen hearts of palm yet.
Yeah,
We do eat the super greens, and we eat chickpeas, and we eat
nice.
pea or lentil pastas, which are all really good, but I
Yeah,
haven't seen the heart's palm. Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
And the zoodles and the other things. So they're, yeah, and I love those protein-based noodles too. Now people really, really like them and they've been helpful, I think.
Nice, nice. Yeah, we're getting more creative, that's for sure, which is
Yeah.
which is great. And a couple of things like when you were talking about, the God, I just lost my train of thought. Oh gosh, sorry about that. I'll move on to something else. It will come back to me. I had something and then I heard a noise and I lost it. What When you think about like women in particular, when we get, in the mid to late fees to early fees, we go through menopause, we get the belly fat. It's not just about the weight gain, but what are the health risks as we start to carry that belly fat?
The problem with belly fat is that it's deep. That's the thing. It's not at the surface. A lot of people, well, I guess I don't want to tell that story. It's not going to be helpful.
We love stories though.
Yeah. Well, some women will notice like when they put on some fat with their pregnancies and they notice they have a very deep belly button.
Mhm.
But at midlife, it isn't the deep belly button anymore. That fat is below the surface and it unfortunately wraps around your organs. It can get into the liver, and the liver is one of the organs we want to be very careful of because we only have one and it detoxifies everything that goes through our systems along with the kidneys, but it's very important. So if we get fat infiltration into the liver, it doesn't work as well. Fat that's deep fat, that visceral fat, also causes inflammation in our bodies, and that increases our risk of heart disease and certain cancers as well. So there are, health risks there. It's an easy sell with most women because we're just noticing my pants do not fit and I do
Mhm.
not want to live like this.
Mhm.
So, but it is a health risk for sure.
Well, and I think that's the important piece because we are a society of, we want to look good, feel good,
Mhm.
and we do focus on the weight aspect, but I think it is important, to recognize that when that's happening, it's not just the surface, it is what's happening underneath it. And then how do we stay cognizant of that to give ourselves the healthiest possibility that we can. So, let's talk a little bit about weight loss drugs.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Ozempic has taken the world by storm. Everybody wants to get their hands on it. Everybody wants a quick fix.
Yeah.
I have to say, Kelly Clarkson looks fantastic. She looks absolutely gorgeous and really like just has settled into, her womanhood, I would say. But what are those risks when we take the shortcuts? And there are
There are two big
rewards.
ones that I think of.
Okay.
And I will also just start by saying I am not an expert on these drugs because I don't prescribe them. I sometimes work with people who have gotten them from their doctors, but I work with people really on lifestyle changes for weight loss. But the concerns for me are there are some gut concerns. Like some people, it slows digestion, which is one of the things that is helpful. But also there are people that get, a frozen gut that needs surgery. There are people that just feel sick all the time while they do this. And I can't kind of ask myself, is it worth it if that's how you
Mm.
feel? Second risk to me is that these are very expensive drugs. And even if they're covered by insurance, you are often paying something large out of pocket. And so people don't stay on them. When we look, they're meant to be a lifelong medication and they can be a wonder drug for people. I don't discount that about them and that there are times that it's very appropriate to use them. But if when we look at research, most people stop around a year.
Hmm.
And I'm worried that it's just a very expensive yo-yo diet.
Hmm.
So those are my concerns.
Yeah.
The things that I am hopeful about, people are talking about microdosing and doing some research around that. That may be a beautiful thing for the future that gives people just an edge, to get over. That will be helpful. But where they are right now, there are some risks. The other thing I would say is that this may be a wonderful thing to consider if you've had lifelong obesity and
Mm.
really have struggled with it. For the woman who has done pretty well. And then all of a sudden at menopause, this has just popped up. You actually are probably able to just lose weight with lifestyle changes, just to give people some hope. Because when people go to their doctors, some of them don't have time to talk about lifestyle changes. So they're like, I'll be happy to write you for the drugs if you like. And a lot of those people that come to me and say, I didn't want medicine. I wanted to talk about lifestyle changes. So, like I said, if this is just a midlife problem for you, you can probably lose the weight with lifestyle changes. It doesn't mean you have to. I have no judgment if people want to use these drugs, but people with lifelong obesity that got worse at midlife, I think these are something to consider in all the choices that you have.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. I was reading or listening to something not too long ago that was talking about how we actually are starving ourselves to death because we don't. So I think that goes back to what you were talking about with the nourishing the body. And even people who are obese and, general population is quick to judge, like, oh my gosh, what are they eating? But in this research I was reading, they were talking about how even people who are obese are actually starving because they're not eating nutrients, right? Like often it's like the quick grab and go. It's what you were talking about, the break rooms have food or people are bringing food and not thinking about. So you're putting bad calories in, but those calories aren't necessarily giving you the nutrition that you need. So I think it does behoove you to read the labels and know what it is that you're ingesting.
Yeah. And a lot of times the snack is not healthy, and we don't need to look for healthy snacks. We need to prioritize meals and
Yeah.
just stop having them.
Yeah. I had a snack earlier. It was a protein snack though.
Okay.
But no, I think you're right. Like I think that is and why are you snacking? Is it boredom? Is it genuine hunger? Like that's what I like even last night I asked myself, I was like peckish and I was like, okay, am I actually hungry or am I just bored and I want
Yeah.
something to eat, right? And
Right.
so I didn't eat last night and which was good, but it's also just sometimes it's one day at a time, right? Because we get
Yeah.
so hard on ourselves and we forget that hey, you're human and take it one day at a time.
Right. And actually, if you're nicer to yourself, I think it's easier to lose weight.
Yes,
I
of
really
course, you're
do.
not holding things.
Right, right. Because if I get people who come to me and they say, I want to lose weight so I'll feel better about myself. And we work on those things together and separately, right? Like, let's work about you feeling better about yourself. And I'm going to teach you how to eat and do things to lose the weight. Because if you get to your goal weight and you've been mean to yourself the whole time, you won't like yourself better then. There'll be some other reason that you're not enough and you don't look right and all the
Great point.
things.
Yeah,
So being kind to yourself and thinking, how can I take care of myself today? How can I nourish myself makes weight loss easier and more sustainable,
love it.
I think.
Yes. No, I agree with you. And when you were saying that, it reminded me of a course that I was teaching, and it was really looking at what's your true motivation, right? Because that 10
Yeah.
pounds or 20 pounds of weight is not necessarily the motivation. It's that cute little black dress you want to get into because you have a class reunion, or you're trying to attract a new partner, or like whatever your motivation might be. But it's understanding what is your deep motivation to get you to where you want to get to. And
Yeah.
the reward, I think, is super important, right?
Right.
So, Dr. Heather, is there anything we didn't talk about that we should talk about before we wrap up today?
We could talk a little bit about metabolism.
Okay.
So metabolism is how our body runs itself. And I just want to let people know that at midlife, your metabolism is not broken. They've actually
Well, that's good
studied
to know.
this. The burner inside of you is fine, but you're losing muscle mass. And so keeping your muscles strong, which you're going to do by eating protein, but also doing some strength training, will actually help keep your metabolism up. Because if you have muscles, your body has to run that part of the system. And if you lose all your muscles and you don't keep strong, then your body will not have to work as hard to keep that going. So that's the exercise piece that I like to emphasize
Yeah.
for metabolism.
That's a great point. It does slow down, but you're absolutely right. It's that strength training is important for so many reasons, right? Even just for your bones and for your core, and being upright, right? Like all of those are really important. So, Dr. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. I think for me personally, like this is super helpful because I still, I still am battling a bit of I've lost some of that menopause belly, but I still have some of it. And I think it gives a lot of hope to the women that are going through that, and recognizing that there are solutions to it.
Yeah.
So that's important. And that there's a support system out there. So where can people find you if they have additional questions about how to navigate this? Maybe something we didn't ask.
Sure. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Also, if you go to my website, heatherawadmd.com, you can find there free resources. And I also have a podcast, the Vibrant Menopause Podcast, where I talk about this stuff.
Nice. The Vibrant Menopause Podcast. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes too, so that people have access to that. Awesome. That's terrific. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been lovely. And wow, like audience, thank you for being here as well. We're super grateful to you because we know you have a choice of what podcast you listen to. So thanks so much for chiming in. And, if this resonates with you, be sure and share it with a friend who potentially is going through the peri or menopause stage of life. Like, let them know there's hope out there and that there's things that you can do. So we're super grateful that you've chimed in today and listened to the show. And, as our gift to you, if you go into the Women in Leadership Empowered website, we have a free leadership quiz that you can take, and it'll give you insight as to how you're showing up in the world as a leader. And leadership can mean lots of things to different people. Leader in your community, leader as a parent, leader in an organization. So it's whatever your definition of leadership actually is. So Dr. Heather, I want to thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thank you for joining us for WIL Talk, sponsored by Women in Leadership Empowered. To learn more about our programs, please visit www.willempowered.com. We look forward to seeing you in our community.